Good evening. I agree with Labour supporters. The freebie scandal is a distraction. A distraction from the terrible policies of this new government. Yes, the Prime Minister's abject greed and double standards in taking over £100,000 worth of freebies since 2019 is an important story. And yes, today's breaking news, the departure of the PM's Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, paints a picture of a government falling apart at the seams, with the appointment of Gray in the first place having been a total political scandal, given her previous role as a supposedly neutral civil servant and laughably tasked with investigating Partygate. So much for a fair trial. But the so-called optics of these scandals pale into insignificance compared to the terrible things that this government has actually done as they approach their first 100 days in power. Where do you start? Handing over sovereignty to the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, gifting a strategic opportunity to China. Refusing to commit to the long-term future of Gibraltar and the Falkland Islands, the latter of which over 250 UK servicemen gave their lives in 1982 to preserve. There is Angela Rayner's brainchild of the overhauling of workers' rights. Time-consuming red tape, the scrapping of 0 hours contracts, the flexibility of which over 1 million people enjoyed last year, and a disincentive on business to hire casual labour. Companies covering sick pay from day one, which will make struggling small businesses sick. Making it harder to fire people who are useless at their job, potentially from day one of their employment, whilst also shortening the probation period, taking away power from companies to decide which members of staff are delivering and which are not. There is the madness of Ed Miliband scrapping new oil and gas licences in the North Sea, rendering us reliant on flaky renewables and importing fossil fuels from abroad for the foreseeable future. There is the assault on the UK car industry by needlessly bringing forward a ban on the sale of new petrol and diesel cars from 2035 to 2030, the only winners of which will be Volkswagen, Mercedes, Fiat and Skoda. Why? Because the EU will continue to make and sell these cars for another 5 years, long after British factories have stopped production. Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson has scrapped the free speech legislation aimed at universities, which means that higher education will continue to churn out a generation of intolerant, closed-minded and brainwashed robots. Now, to be fair to the government, they have achieved one record since coming into office. 1,000 migrants entered the country illegally yesterday. That is the highest in a single day this year. 4 people tragically died, including a child who it's reported was trampled to death. The illegal crossings are an economic, national security and humanitarian disaster. Labour's stroke of genius was to axe the Rwanda plan, our only serious deterrent, which the Irish government admitted was already working before the first flight had gone. Feared tax rises in the October budget to pay for inflation-busting pay packets for junior doctors and train drivers are already seeing Britain's wealth creators taking flight, with 10,000 millionaires expected to leave the UK this year alone, another unwanted record. Plus, there are concerns that the non-DOMS tax, an egregious assault on wealth creators from abroad, ludicrously started by the Tories, may now cost the country money. Rachel Reeves may cook the books, tweaking how debt is calculated, guaranteeing a financial burden on future generations and the risk of more inflation. Teenage boys at school could be reported to a terror watch list called Prevent for being sexist in the classroom. True story. And this spiteful administration has decided to price lower-income families out of private sector education. Even the Observer newspaper, which is the in-house newsletter of the Labour Party, today reveals that the government's tax raid on private schools may have to be delayed because of warnings from unions, tax experts and school leaders about admin chaos, teacher job losses and further pressure on the state sector. Well, that's hardly surprising, is it, given that a reported 10,000 children have already left the private sector since this wicked policy was announced. It's unconscionable to tax any institution which educates our kids. So if this is what Labour can achieve in 100 days, just think what they can achieve in 1,000. The freebie scandal looks trivial compared to what they're actually doing in government. Based on how they've started, there is no way that Labour will win the next election. But the question is, how much of a country will there be left to rebuild once they're gone? Labour, their first 100 days. Your verdict, please. gbnews.com/your say. But first, tonight's top pundits, political consultant and commentator Suzanne Evans. Also delighted to welcome TV news legend, the one and only Michael Crick, and former Conservative MP, Sir Michael Fabricant. Good to see all three of you. Suzanne, let me start with you. Labour, after 100 days, your verdict?
It's been pretty dire, hasn't it? I can't remember in my lifetime a government that was so unpopular so quickly. Arguably Liz Truss's government, although I thought she was fantastic, actually. That budget was great. But you would disagree. I know, Michael. I thought it was amazing. I had tears in my eyes. Finally, a Conservative budget. But anyway,
just think if she'd stayed leader with the Conservatives, would have ended up with even fewer seats.
Putting that aside, they've not had any honeymoon period at all. And actually, it's not even 100 days yet. It's not technically 100 days until
I think it's
a week today.
Next Saturday.
It's, Saturday, Sunday,
yeah.
one or the other. So it's only 93 days. It's been an absolute... And you did a very good list there of all the terrible things that they have done wrong. And I've been racking my brain since I got here tonight thinking, is there anything I agree with that they've actually done? And there is one thing, and that's Rachel Reeves, Chancellor, talking about cutting the foreign aid budget. But of course, David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, is pushing back against that. So they've done nothing wrong. It's astonishing when you see the front page in The Guardian attacking them, when you hear broadcasters on other channels, who I tend to think are a little bit more left-wing, attacking them, when you hear Labour supporters attacking them. There's a left-winger I actually retweeted today because I agreed with him, and I was shocked because I thought normally we're definitely not on the same page, but today we were, and that was over the assisted dying bill that's potentially going through. So, yeah, no honeymoon period whatsoever, complete disaster. They've alienated everybody, and partly because what they've done is their policies have not been thought through. They've been the politics of envy. It's a policy policies to please their hardline socialist supporters. Very few of those Labour people who voted, though, are actually that hardline, and I think they're devastated and shocked.
Michael, it's my view that the freebie scandal is important. We should talk about it, but it is a distraction. What's really concerning me is what this government is actually doing.
Well, it has done some good things. Don't suppose any of you will think they're good. I mean, scrapping the Rwanda scheme. Rwanda is an authoritarian, illiberal country, and it's not the sort of place that you should send people.
Denmark was going to
nothing in its place.
Well, Denmark is wrong. But let me make some more general points. Otherwise, we start arguing about individual things. Sure. This government lacks, and this Downing Street lacks political judgment. Starmer is new to politics, actually. He's only been an MP 10 years, 9 years. And he didn't do any politics before. He hasn't got political instincts. That's why he makes silly errors. But Sue Gray, thankfully now gone, should have been advising him. She was, after all, propriety advisor in the Cabinet Office and ethics advisor. And she should have said to him, look, it looks really dreadful to take £16,000 worth of suits.
This is a woman that's just fresh from investigating Partygate.
Exactly. And so many of the other things. I mean, they've just got their... What they now need is people in Downing Street who understand how policies are going to go down with the general public. The other thing they've done wrong is that they put all their effort into winning the election. It's now clear that in most areas of activity, they put no effort into working out how they were going to do all the things they promised.
Their manifesto was a fabrication. I remember Rachel Reeves standing up there saying, our manifesto is going to be fully costed. And I thought, no, it won't be, because they never are. There's only been one. That's the one I wrote for UKIP in 2015. That's the only one that's ever been fully
honest
contested.
Manifesto.
Only honest manifesto ever.
However, none of this is as bad as the absolute shower that was the last Tory administration, Sir Michael.
Well, you have to say that, don't you, for Ofcom? I don't think.
Well, I'll say it as well.
Well, I don't. Well, yes, you should ask him to
Well, the
say it.
public took that view. They chucked your lot out.
Well,
didn't they?
we'd been in office for some 14 years, and I think, we were tired, quite frankly. But, it's easy to say, of course, Labour has been a complete shambles, but it's not just the three of us saying it. I've got some the latest stats is that the net approval rating for this government now is minus 39% just 3 months in, which compares with plus 68% when it was Tony Blair. And 57% of Labour supporters apparently now disapprove of policy which the government is doing. And, all these things which were seen to be obvious things to do, politics of envy, like you said, politics of envy, like doing the non-dom, like doing the taxing of
Although the
private
non-dom
schools.
tried to do the
non-doms was introduced by Jeremy Hunt.
It was introduced by Jeremy Hunt, but
Which
it's
is
been
a very stupid policy.
Not to
I
the same
agree with
extent.
you because it's actually costing the state money.
Well, let me tell you, we're going to come back to this.